The planet Calith was a strange and lonely place, far away from the blue skies and green fields of Earth. It had been centuries since humanity left their dying homeworld behind, seeking refuge among the stars. Now Calith was their new beginning, a barren yet resource-rich planet with jagged mountains, endless deserts, and an eerie silence that seemed to stretch forever. Ji-un sat at her desk in the dimly lit laboratory, staring blankly at the blinking monitors around her. Her head throbbed as she tried to piece together what had happened. She remembered fragments, flashes of light, alarms blaring, voices shouting, but nothing clear enough to make sense of it all. The last thing she recalled was activating the Time Nexus, a device she had spent years designing. It was supposed to open a stable portal through time, allowing scientists to study history without interference. But something had gone wrong. Terribly wrong. Her assistant Hyunsu should have been there. He always stayed late when they were running experiments. Yet the lab felt empty now, unnervingly so. Ji-un stood up slowly, her legs stiff from sitting too long. As she walked toward the central console where the Time Nexus rested, she noticed something odd. Objects in the room weren't behaving normally. A pencil on the table floated mid-air for a moment before falling back down. A glass of water rippled as if touched by invisible hands, even though no one was near it. Time itself seemed unstable. Hyunsu? Ji-un called out hesitantly, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. No answer came. Just the hum of machinery and the faint crackle of energy emanating from the Nexus. She approached it cautiously, her heart pounding. The machine looked different than before. Its sleek metallic surface shimmered like liquid and tiny sparks danced across its frame. It was beautiful but terrifying. She reached out to touch it, then pulled her hand back sharply. What if it was dangerous? What if it could hurt her or worse, pull her into some unknown void? But curiosity got the better of her. After all, she had built this thing. She knew its every component, every circuit, or at least she thought she did. As Ji-un leaned closer, she saw flashes of images reflected on the surface of the Nexus. At first they were blurry, indistinct shapes. Then they sharpened into scenes she didn't recognize. A city skyline unlike anything on Calith. People dressed in strange clothing, speaking languages she couldn't understand. And then herself, but not quite herself. In the reflection, she wore armor instead of her usual lab coat, standing atop a battlefield littered with debris. She blinked and the image vanished. What is happening? Ji-un whispered to herself. She turned away from the Nexus, trying to shake off the unease creeping over her. That's when she noticed the footprints on the floor. They led away from the console, trailing dust and dirt as if someone had stumbled through the lab in a hurry. They belonged to Hyunsu. She recognized the pattern of his boots immediately. Following the trail, Ji-un moved deeper into the facility. The air grew colder with each step and the lights flickered sporadically. She passed rows of equipment and shelves stacked with tools, all untouched except for a few scattered papers lying on the ground. One of them caught her eye, a note scribbled hastily in Hyunsu's handwriting. It read, "Something's wrong with the Nexus. Don't trust it. Find me." Her stomach churned. Whatever had happened, Hyunsu wasn't safe. She needed to find him, and fast. The footprints led her to a door marked Restricted Access. Normally, it would require a security clearance code to open, but the panel beside it was dark and unresponsive. With a deep breath, Ji-un pushed against the heavy metal door, surprised when it creaked open easily. Inside was a small observation room overlooking another section of the lab. Through the reinforced glass, she saw chaos. Equipment lay smashed, wires dangling uselessly from the ceiling. In the center of the destruction stood a figure hunched over a control panel, frantically pressing buttons. It took Ji-un a moment to realize who it was, Hyunsu, but he looked different. His movements were jerky, almost mechanical, and his face was pale, almost translucent under the harsh fluorescent lights. "Hyunsu," she shouted, banging on the glass. He didn't respond. Instead, he straightened abruptly and turned to look at her. For a split second, his eyes met hers, and what she saw chilled her to the bone. They weren't Hyunsu's warm, kind eyes anymore. They were cold, empty, filled with something alien. Before Ji-un could react, the lights in the room flickered violently, plunging everything into darkness. When they came back on seconds later, Hyunsu was gone. The control panel he'd been working on sparked ominously, and a low rumble shook the entire facility. Panic surged through her veins. Something big was about to happen, something she might not survive. Backing away from the window, Ji-un retraced her steps toward the main lab. Every instinct told her to leave, to run as far away from this place as possible. But she couldn't, not without answers. Not without Hyun-soo. As she entered the central chamber again, she froze. The time nexus was glowing brighter now, pulsating with an otherworldly light. Around it, the air shimmered like heat waves rising from desert sand, and then out of nowhere a voice spoke. "You shouldn't be here." Ji-un spun around, searching for the source of the sound. Standing in the doorway was a man she didn't recognize. He was tall, with sharp features and piercing gray eyes that seemed to see right through her. His clothes were simple but unfamiliar, made of materials she couldn't identify. Most striking of all was the expression on his face, a mixture of concern and urgency. "Who are you?" Ji-un demanded, clutching the edge of the nearest table for support. "My name is Kyung-min," the man replied, stepping closer, "and we don't have much time. The Nexus, it's destabilizing. If we don't stop it, it'll tear apart reality itself." Reality. The word hung in the air between them, heavy and foreboding. Ji-un wanted to laugh, to dismiss this stranger's words as nonsense, but deep down she knew he was telling the truth. Everything she'd seen, the floating objects, the distorted reflections, Hyun-soo's disappearance, pointed to something beyond her understanding. Something catastrophic. "How do you know about the Nexus?" she asked, narrowing her eyes suspiciously. Kyung-min hesitated, glancing briefly at the glowing machine behind her. "Because I've seen what happens when it fails," he said finally. "I'm from another dimension, Ji-un. One affected by the same anomaly you created here. We need to work together if we want to fix this." For a moment, Ji-un just stared at him, unsure whether to believe him or call him insane. But looking into his eyes, she saw sincerity and fear. Whatever he claimed, he genuinely believed it. And right now, that was enough. "Fine," she said, exhaling sharply. "Tell me what we need to do." Kyung-min nodded, relief washing over his face. "First, we need to stabilize the core. Without it, the rift will keep expanding until it consumes everything, including us." He gestured toward the Nexus. "But we'll need data. Logs, readings, anything that can help us understand how this started." Ji-un nodded, already moving toward the computer terminals lining the walls. Together they began sifting through files and records, piecing together clues about the experiment's failure. Each discovery brought more questions than answers, but slowly a picture began to emerge. Something or someone had tampered with the Nexus before activation. Someone who didn't want it to succeed. As hours passed, exhaustion set in. Ji-un rubbed her temples, trying to focus despite the growing tension in the room. Kyung-min worked silently beside her, his brow furrowed in concentration. Despite their dire situation, she found herself stealing glances at him. There was something about him, his calm demeanor, his unwavering determination, that intrigued her. Finally, they found what they were looking for. A fragment of code embedded deep within the system. It was subtle, nearly undetectable unless you knew exactly where to look. But once uncovered, its purpose became clear. This wasn't just a malfunction. It was sabotage. "We need to shut it down," Ji-un said firmly, turning to face Kyung-min. "Now?" He nodded grimly. "Agreed. But shutting it down won't be easy. Once we initiate the process, there's no going back." "Are you ready for that?" Ji-un hesitated, weighing the risks. Failure meant certain death for both of them. Success meant undoing everything she'd worked for. Yet deep down she knew there was only one choice. "Yes," she said quietly. "Let's do it." Together they approached the Nexus, their resolve hardened. Whatever awaited them next, they would face it side by side, because in this fractured reality, trust was the only thing keeping them grounded.
Ji-un and Kyung-min stood side by side in front of the glowing time nexus, its pulsating light casting eerie shadows across the walls.
The air was thick with tension, and every sound, the hum of machinery, the faint crackle of energy, felt amplified in the silence between them. Ji-un glanced at Kyung-min, her mind racing with questions. Who was he really? How could she trust him when so much about him remained a mystery? Kyung-min seemed to sense her unease. Without looking at her, he said, "I know this is hard to believe, but I'm not your enemy, Ji-un. If we don't work together, none of us will survive." His words were calm, almost soothing, but they didn't ease the knot of doubt twisting inside her chest. Still, she nodded. They had no other choice. Whatever Kyung-min's secrets were, uncovering them would have to wait. For now, stopping the Nexus was their priority. Let's start with what you found, Kyungmin continued, gesturing toward the computer terminal where they'd discovered the tampered code. That fragment, it's a clue. Someone deliberately interfered with the system before activation. We need to figure out why. Ji-yoon walked back to the terminal, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She replayed the fragment on the screen, studying it carefully. It was subtle, cleverly hidden within layers of programming meant to regulate the flow of temporal energy. Whoever had done this knew exactly what they were doing. Do you think it was Hyunsu? Ji-yoon asked, though the idea made her stomach churn. Hyunsu had been her assistant for years. He was methodical, loyal, and brilliant. Could he have betrayed her like this? Kyungmin shook his head. It doesn't fit. From what you've told me, Hyunsu trusted you completely. And judging by those footprints you followed earlier, he wasn't acting of his own free will. Ji-yoon frowned. That much was true. Hyunsu's behavior in the observation room had been strange, unnatural. His eyes, she couldn't forget the way they'd stared at her, devoid of warmth or recognition. Something had happened to him. Something connected to the Nexus. As if reading her thoughts, Kyungmin added, the Nexus isn't just tearing apart reality. It's affecting people too. Anyone exposed to its energy can become unstable, mentally, physically, even existentially. That might explain what happened to Hyunsu. Ji-yoon swallowed hard, trying to push aside the guilt gnawing at her. If she hadn't activated the Nexus, none of this would have happened. Hyunsu wouldn't be missing, and the lab wouldn't feel like a ghost town. But dwelling on the past wouldn't help them now. She needed to focus, so what do we do next? She asked, turning back to Kyungmin. We follow the trail, he replied. Whoever tampered with the Nexus left traces, fragments of data scattered throughout the system. If we piece them together, we might find answers. And maybe even Hyunsu. With that, they dove deeper into the labyrinth of files and logs stored in the lab's mainframe. Each discovery brought new questions, but slowly patterns began to emerge. One name appeared repeatedly, the Kronos Syndicate. Ji-yoon had never heard of it before, but based on the context, it sounded dangerous. Files labeled classified hinted at an organization obsessed with controlling time itself, manipulating events across dimensions to serve their own agenda. They're playing with forces they don't fully understand, Kyungmin muttered as he scrolled through the documents. And now, thanks to the Nexus, they've unleashed something far beyond their control. Ji-yoon leaned closer, scanning the text alongside him. If this syndicate is real, then they must have infiltrated the lab somehow. Maybe they planted someone here to sabotage the experiment. It's possible, Kyungmin agreed, but whoever it was, they're long gone now. What matters is that we stop the rift before it spreads further. Just then, the lights flickered again, drawing their attention back to the Nexus. Its glow had intensified, bathing the room in an unnatural blue hue. Around it, objects began to shift unpredictably, chairs sliding across the floor, papers fluttering off desks as if caught in an invisible wind. The instability was growing worse. We're running out of time, Ji-yoon said urgently. If we don't act soon, the entire facility could collapse. Kyungmin nodded, his expression grim. There's one more thing we can try. The Nexus has a fail-safe mechanism, a protocol designed to stabilize the core temporarily. If we activate it, it should buy us enough time to locate Hyunsu and shut down the device completely. But activating the failsafe requires manual input, Ji-yoon pointed out. Someone would have to go inside the Nexus chamber. I'll do it, Kyungmin said without hesitation. No, Ji-yoon shot back immediately. You don't know how this technology works. I built it, I'm the only one who can handle it. Kyungmin opened his mouth to argue, but Ji-yoon cut him off. This is my responsibility. If anyone gets hurt because of this, it should be me. For a moment, they locked eyes, neither willing to back down. Finally, Kyungmin sighed. Fine, but I'm coming with you. If anything goes wrong, I'll be right there to pull you out. Reluctantly, Ji-yoon agreed. Together, they approached the Nexus chamber, their footsteps echoing ominously in the empty hallways. As they stepped inside, the temperature dropped sharply, and the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. The walls shimmered with the same liquid-like quality Ji-yoon had noticed earlier, distorting her reflection as she moved. At the center of the chamber stood the Nexus core, a massive sphere of swirling energy suspended in midair, thin tendrils of light extended outward, connecting it to various nodes embedded in the walls. It was mesmerizing and terrifying. This is it, Ji-yoon murmured, her voice barely audible over the low hum filling the room. Once I activate the failsafe, we won't have much time. You'll need to monitor the readings from outside while I adjust the settings manually. Kyungmin nodded, his jaw tight with determination. Be careful, Jiyeon. This thing isn't stable. Taking a deep breath, Jiyeon stepped closer to the core. She reached out cautiously, her hand trembling as she touched the surface. The material was cool to the touch, yet it vibrated faintly, as if alive. A surge of energy coursed through her fingertips, making her gasp. For a brief second, she saw flashes of images. Strange landscapes, unfamiliar faces, moments that felt both distant and intimate. Then, just as quickly, they vanished. Shaking off the disorienting sensation, Jiyeon focused on the task at hand. She accessed the fail-safe controls, her fingers flying over the holographic interface projected before her. Numbers and symbols scrolled rapidly, each adjustment bringing the core closer to stability. Behind her, Kyungmin kept watch, calling out updates as the readings fluctuated wildly. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled violently. The Nexus emitted a deafening roar, its light flaring brighter than ever. Ji-eun stumbled, nearly losing her balance, but managed to hold on. Through the chaos, she heard Kyungmin shouting, "Hurry! It's destabilizing faster than expected." Sweat dripped down her forehead as she worked frantically, her movements precise despite the mounting pressure. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the core stabilized. The trembling subsided and the blinding light dimmed to a steady glow. "It's done," Ji-eun panted, stepping away from the Nexus. Her legs felt weak and her head spun from the effort. But they had succeeded, at least for now. Kyungmin rushed to her side, steadying her with a firm grip on her arm. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," she replied, though her voice wavered slightly. "But we're not out of the woods yet. We still need to find Hyun-soo and shut this thing down permanently." As they exited the chamber, the facility seemed eerily quiet once more. The storm of energy had passed, leaving behind an unsettling calm. Yet amidst the stillness, Jiyeon couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Somewhere, someone or something was watching them. "Listen," Kyungmin said softly, his gaze darting around the room. "We need to stay alert. The Syndicate knows we're here. They'll come for the Nexus eventually. And when they do, we'll be ready," Ji-eun said firmly, squaring her shoulders. Despite everything, she felt a spark of resolve ignite within her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she wouldn't face them alone. Together, they set off to search for Hyun-soo, their footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness of the lab. The journey ahead promised danger, uncertainty, and sacrifice, but also hope, because even in the darkest moments, connections formed between strangers could shine like beacons, guiding them toward a brighter future. The lab was silent except for the faint hum of the stabilized Nexus. Jiyeon and Kyungmin moved cautiously through the dimly lit corridors, their footsteps echoing softly against the cold metal walls. The air felt heavier now, charged with an energy that prickled at their skin. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer, every sound sharper. They were searching for Hyun-soo, but the oppressive atmosphere made it hard to focus. Ji-eun clutched a small handheld scanner in one hand, its screen flickering as it attempted to detect any signs of life nearby. So far, it had shown nothing but static. She glanced at Kyungmin, who walked beside her with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He hadn't spoken much since they left the Nexus chamber, and his silence only added to the tension. "Do you think he's still here?" Ji-eun asked finally, breaking the quiet. Her voice sounded too loud in the empty hallway. Kyungmin hesitated before answering. "He could be. The Nexus affects time and space. It might have trapped him somewhere within its influence, but where?" Ji-eun pressed. "If he's still alive, we need to find him soon. Who knows what this thing is doing to him?" Kyungmin didn't respond right away. Instead, he stopped walking and turned to face her. His gray eyes locked onto hers, filled with a mix of concern and something else she couldn't quite place. "Ji-eun," he said slowly, "there's something I need to tell you about the Nexus. Something you might not want to hear." Her stomach tightened. "What is it?" "The rift isn't just distorting reality, it's creating echoes. Fragments of alternate timelines are bleeding into our world. You've already seen glimpses of them, haven't you? In the reflections, in the visions?" Ji-eun nodded reluctantly. She remembered the flashes of unfamiliar scenes reflected on the surface of the Nexus, the strange city skyline, the armored version of herself standing amidst destruction. At the time, she dismissed them as stress or exhaustion playing tricks on her mind. But now, hearing Kyungmin confirm her fears, she felt a chill run down her spine. "These echoes aren't random," Kyungmin continued. "They're connected to you, to your choices, your actions. The Nexus amplifies them, showing you possibilities that exist or once existed in other dimensions. Ji-un frowned. So what does that mean? Am I seeing the future? Or the past? Both, Kyung-min replied. And neither. These are fragments of alternate realities, worlds where things turned out differently. Some may feel familiar, others will seem completely alien, but all of them are tied to you somehow. Before Ji-un could respond, the scanner in her hand emitted a sharp beep. Startled, she looked down at the screen. A faint signal appeared, pulsing weakly but steadily. It was coming from deeper inside the facility, near the old research archives, a section long abandoned after funding cuts forced most of the team to relocate. That has to be Hyun-soo, Ji-un said, gripping the scanner tighter. Without waiting for Kyung-min's response, she started toward the signal, her pace quickening despite the growing unease gnawing at her chest. The archives were located in the lowest level of the lab, buried beneath layers of reinforced concrete and security protocols designed to protect sensitive data. As they descended the narrow staircase leading to the area, the temperature dropped noticeably. The air grew damp, carrying a faint metallic tang that made Ji-un wrinkle her nose. The walls were lined with rows of dusty shelves, stacked high with outdated equipment and forgotten files. This place gives me the creeps, Ji-un muttered under her breath, scanning the room with the device. The signal grew stronger, guiding them toward a secluded corner where a single terminal remained powered on. Its screen glowed faintly, displaying lines of corrupted text scrolling endlessly. Kyung-min stepped closer, examining the terminal. Someone's been here recently, he said, pointing to fresh fingerprints smudged across the keyboard. Hyun-soo? Maybe, Ji-un replied, though doubt lingered in her tone. But why would he come here? There's nothing useful down here anymore. As if in response to her question, the terminal suddenly flickered, then displayed a series of images, grainy, distorted, but unmistakably depicting scenes from another time and place. One showed Ji-un standing in front of a massive crowd, delivering a speech while soldiers stood guard behind her. Another revealed Kyung-min leading a group of rebels through a war-torn city, his face hardened with determination. And yet another featured Hyun-soo chained to a chair, his expression hollow and defeated. What is this? Ji-un whispered, staring at the screen in disbelief. The images shifted rapidly, blending together until they formed a chaotic mosaic of possibilities. Each frame felt like a shard of glass cutting into her thoughts, forcing her to confront versions of herself she barely recognized. Kyung-min placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch grounding her. These are the echoes I warned you about, he said quietly. Alternate timelines where your decisions led to different outcomes. Some good, some bad, all interconnected. But why am I seeing them now? Ji-un demanded, her voice rising. Why me? Because you activated the Nexus, Kyung-min explained. It's using you as an anchor, pulling fragments of these realities into ours. That's why everything feels so unstable. You're caught between worlds. Ji-un shook her head, trying to process what he was saying. It was too much, too overwhelming. She wanted to shut it all out, to pretend none of it was real. But deep down she knew he was telling the truth. The evidence was right in front of her, impossible to ignore. We can't stay here, Kyung-min said urgently, glancing around the room. The longer we linger, the more dangerous it becomes. The echoes will start affecting us directly if we're not careful. Ji-un nodded, though her legs felt heavy as she forced herself to move. As they turned to leave, however, the terminal emitted a low whirring noise. The images vanished, replaced by a single line of text blinking ominously on the screen. Trust no one. A shiver ran down Ji-un's spine. She looked at Kyung-min, who stared at the message with a troubled expression. What does that mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Kyung-min admitted. But whoever wrote it knew we'd come here, and they wanted us to see it. The words hung in the air between them, casting a shadow over their already fragile trust. Ji-un couldn't help but wonder, was Kyung-min truly on her side? Or was he hiding something just like everyone else? They left the archives quickly, retracing their steps back toward the main lab. Along the way, Ji-un noticed subtle changes in the environment. Objects rearranged slightly, lights flickering in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. It was as if the facility itself was alive, watching their every move. When they reached the central chamber, the Nexus core loomed before them, its glow steady but ominous. Ji-yoon approached it cautiously, her mind racing with questions. Could the Nexus be manipulating them, feeding them false information to keep them distracted? Or was someone else controlling it from the shadows? Ji-yoon, Kyung-min said suddenly, his tone sharp. Look at this. He pointed to a panel on the wall which displayed a series of surveillance feeds from various parts of the facility. On one screen they saw Hyun-soo, or at least someone who looked like him, walking briskly down a corridor. His movements were jerky, unnatural, just like the last time Ji-yoon had seen him. But this time there was something else. A figure following him closely, cloaked in darkness. Who's that? Ji-yoon asked, her heart pounding. I don't know, Kyung-min replied grimly. But we need to find out. Without hesitation, they set off in pursuit, guided by the surveillance footage. The trail led them deeper into the facility, to areas they rarely visited. The further they went, the more distorted reality became. Walls seemed to shift position when they weren't looking. Doors opened into rooms that shouldn't exist. Time itself felt fluid, stretching and contracting unpredictably. Finally, they arrived at a sealed door marked Restricted Access. Unlike the others they'd encountered, this one required a biometric scan to open. Ji-yoon hesitated, unsure whether to risk triggering another anomaly. But Kyung-min stepped forward, pressing his palm against the scanner without hesitation. To their surprise, the door slid open smoothly. Beyond it lay a small observation deck overlooking a cavernous chamber filled with strange machinery. In the center stood Hyun-soo, his back to them, surrounded by glowing orbs of light that hovered eerily in the air. Hyun-soo, Ji-yoon called out, relief flooding her voice. She started toward him, but Kyung-min grabbed her arm, holding her back. Wait, he urged. Something's not right. At that moment, Hyun-soo turned to face them. His expression was blank, his eyes devoid of emotion. Then, without warning, he spoke, not in his own voice, but in a chorus of overlapping tones that sent chills down Ji-yoon's spine. You cannot stop what has begun, he intoned, raising a hand toward the ceiling. The orbs of light flared brightly, bathing the room in blinding radiance. Ji-yoon shielded her eyes, struggling to make sense of what was happening. When the light faded, Hyun-soo was gone, and in his place stood a figure clad in black, her features obscured by a hood. She stepped forward, revealing piercing green eyes that seemed to pierce through Ji-yoon's soul. My name is Hyejin, the woman said calmly, her voice dripping with authority, and you've meddled in forces far beyond your understanding. For a moment, Ji-yoon froze, unable to speak. Beside her, Kyung-min tensed, his fists clenched tightly. Whatever Hyejin was planning won the room was bathed in an unnatural glow as Hyejin stepped forward, her presence commanding yet unsettling. Ji-yoon felt rooted to the spot, her mind racing to process what she was seeing. Hyun-soo had vanished completely, replaced by this mysterious woman who radiated an aura of power and control. Beside her, Kyung-min shifted slightly, his body tense like a coiled spring ready to strike. Who are you? Ji-yeon demanded, her voice trembling despite her attempt to sound firm. What have you done with Hyun-soo? Hyejin tilted her head slightly, studying Ji-yeon with those piercing green eyes. There was no warmth in her gaze, only calculation. Hyun-soo is safe, she replied coolly. For now. But his fate depends on your actions. What do you mean? Ji-yeon pressed, taking a cautious step closer. Why are you here? What do you want from us? Hyejin smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. I am here because of the Nexus, she said simply. It holds the key to reshaping reality itself, and I intend to use it. Ji-yeon's stomach churned at the thought. Reshaping reality? The implications were staggering, horrifying even. If someone like Hyejin gained control over the Nexus, there would be no limit to the destruction she could unleash. Entire dimensions could collapse under her ambition. You can't do that, Ji-yeon said, her voice rising. You don't understand what you're dealing with. This isn't just about power, it's about survival. If the Nexus destabilizes further, everything will fall apart. Hyejin's smile widened, almost mocking. Oh, I understand perfectly, she countered, which is why I've spent years preparing for this moment. Unlike you, I know exactly how to harness its potential without destroying myself, or anyone else in the process. Kyung-min finally spoke up, his tone sharp and accusing. You're lying. You're part of the Chronos Syndicate, aren't you? You've been manipulating events across dimensions for your own gain. Hyejin turned her attention to him, her expression unreadable. Ah, so you've heard of us, she said smoothly. Impressive. Though I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. You've crossed paths with our agents before, haven't you? Kyungmin stiffened visibly, but he didn't deny it. Instead, he glanced briefly at Ji-un, guilt flickering across his face. She noticed the look immediately and frowned, suspicion creeping into her thoughts. "What does she mean?" Ji-un asked sharply, turning to face him. "What aren't you telling me?" Kyungmin hesitated, clearly torn between keeping his secrets and coming clean. Finally, he sighed heavily and met her gaze. "She's right," he admitted. "I used to work for the Syndicate, but I left them. I saw what they were planning, and I couldn't stand by while they destroyed entire worlds." Ji-un stared at him, her mind reeling. So Kyungmin wasn't just a stranger from another dimension. He was tied to the very organization threatening to exploit the Nexus. How could she trust him now? "Why should I believe you?" she snapped, her frustration boiling over.
How do I know you're not still working for them?
"I'm not," Kyungmin insisted, his voice tinged with desperation. "If I were, why would I risk my life helping you stop the Nexus? Why would I warn you about the echoes, about the dangers of tampering with time? Think about it, Ji-un. I've been honest with you every step of the way." Ji-un wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her resolve. His past connection to the Syndicate cast a shadow over everything he'd said or done since they met. Was he truly on her side, or was this all part of some elaborate scheme? Before she could respond, Hyejin interrupted, her tone dripping with disdain. "Enough of this melodrama," she said curtly. "You two are wasting time arguing when you should be focusing on the bigger picture. The Nexus cannot remain active indefinitely. Either it stabilizes under my control or it collapses entirely. And what happens if we let you take charge?" Ji-un shot back, crossing her arms defiantly. "You'll rewrite history however you see fit, won't you? Erase people, destroy civilizations, all to serve your twisted vision of perfection." Hyejin's expression darkened, her patience wearing thin. "Perfection is subjective," she retorted. "But yes, I will reshape reality. And unlike you, I have the knowledge and resources to ensure it succeeds." "That's insane," Ji-un exclaimed. "You're playing with forces you don't fully understand. Even if you succeed, you'll only create more chaos." Hyejin smirked, seemingly amused by Ji-un's defiance. "Perhaps," she conceded, "but chaos has always been a necessary step toward progress. Besides, sacrifices must be made for the greater good." Her words sent a chill down Ji-un's spine. Sacrifices. Did that include Hyun-soo, or anyone else caught in the crossfire of Hyejin's ambitions? Kyungmin stepped forward, positioning himself between Ji-un and Hyejin. "We won't let you do this," he declared firmly. "Whatever plans you have for the Nexus, they end here." Hyejin raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "And how do you propose to stop me?" she challenged. "You're outnumbered, outmatched, and running out of options. Face it, you've already lost." As if on cue, the doors behind her slid open, revealing several armed figures clad in black uniforms emblazoned with the insignia of the Chronos Syndicate. Their weapons were sleek and futuristic, designed for maximum efficiency. Without hesitation, they raised their guns, aiming directly at Ji-un and Kyungmin. Ji-un's heart raced as adrenaline surged through her veins. They were trapped, surrounded with no clear escape route. Yet even in the face of overwhelming odds, she refused to give up. "There's always a way," she muttered under her breath, her mind racing to formulate a plan. Out loud, she addressed Hyejin one last time. "You think you've won, but you're wrong. The Nexus doesn't belong to you or anyone else. It's too dangerous to control." Hyejin chuckled softly, her confidence unwavering. "Brave words," she said mockingly. "But bravery alone won't save you." With that, she gestured for her men to advance. Ji-un and Kyungmin exchanged a quick glance, silently agreeing on their next move. As the Syndicate agents closed in, Ji-un reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device, a prototype EMP disruptor she'd been developing for emergencies. She activated it with a single press of a button, sending out a pulse of energy that momentarily disabled the agents' weapons. "Go," Kyungmin shouted, grabbing Ji-un's arm and pulling her toward the nearest exit. They sprinted through the doorway, narrowly avoiding the stunned Syndicate operatives as they recovered from the EMP blast. Behind them, Hyejin's voice echoed coldly through the chamber. "Don't bother running. You can't hide forever." Despite the threat, Ji-un pushed herself harder, her legs burning with exertion. They needed to regroup, rethink their strategy. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. Trusting each other would be harder than ever. As they fled deeper into the facility, Ji-un couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every corner, every shadow seemed alive with unseen eyes. The echoes of alternate realities continued to haunt her, blurring the line between truth and illusion. And somewhere amidst the chaos, Hyun-soo remained a prisoner, his fate hanging precariously in the balance. Yet amidst the fear and uncertainty, a spark of determination burned within Ji-un. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she vowed to fight, not just for herself, but for everyone whose lives depended on stopping Hye-jin and the Syndicate. Because sometimes, the greatest battles are fought not with weapons but with courage, resilience, and the unshakable belief that even in the darkest moments, hope can light the way. Ji-un and Kyung-min ran through the labyrinthine corridors of the lab, their footsteps echoing loudly in the oppressive silence. Behind them, shouts rang out as Hye-jin's agents gave chase. The EMP disruptor had bought them precious seconds, but it wouldn't hold off the Syndicate for long. Ji-un clutched the device tightly in her hand, her mind racing with possibilities. They needed a plan, and fast. "We can't keep running," Kyung-min said between breaths, glancing over his shoulder. "They'll corner us eventually." "I know," Ji-un replied, her voice strained from exertion. "But we need time to think. If we stop now, they'll capture us. And then what happens to Hyun-soo? To everyone else?" Kyung-min nodded grimly, understanding the stakes. He grabbed her arm, steering her toward a narrow maintenance tunnel partially hidden by a stack of crates. "In here," he whispered urgently. "It'll slow them down." Without hesitation, they ducked into the cramped passage, pulling the crates back into place behind them. The space was tight, barely wide enough for them to squeeze through, but it offered some cover from their pursuers. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, the sounds of pursuit faded, replaced by an eerie stillness. Finally, they emerged into a dimly lit chamber that looked unlike any part of the facility Ji-un recognized. The walls shimmered faintly, as if made of liquid metal, and strange symbols pulsed softly along the floor. In the center of the room stood a massive structure, a swirling vortex of energy suspended within a circular frame. It was smaller than the main Nexus core but radiated an equally powerful presence. This is impossible," Ji-un murmured, staring at the vortex in awe. "How did they build another one?" "It's not another one," Kyung-min corrected, his voice low and serious. "This is where the rift began, the heart of the Nexus itself." Ji-un turned to him, confusion etched across her face. "What do you mean? I thought the core upstairs was the source." Kyung-min shook his head. "That's just a stabilizer. This is the true origin point, the gateway connecting all dimensions. Hye-jin must have used it to anchor her operations here." As if summoned by their conversation, a figure stepped out from the shadows near the vortex. It was Hyun-soo, or at least someone who resembled him. His eyes were hollow, his movements mechanical, as though he were being controlled by an unseen force. He approached them slowly, his expression blank. "Hyun-soo!" Ji-un cried, rushing toward him. But before she could reach him, Kyung-min pulled her back sharply. "Don't," he warned. "It's not really him. Not anymore." Tears welled up in Ji-un's eyes as she watched her friend stand there lifeless and unresponsive. "What have they done to you?" she whispered brokenly. Before either of them could react further, Hye-jin appeared at the edge of the chamber, flanked by several armed agents. Her green eyes gleamed with triumph as she surveyed the scene. "You've led me right to the prize," she said smoothly, gesturing toward the vortex. "I should thank you for saving me the trouble of finding it myself." Kyung-min stepped protectively in front of Ji-un, his stance defiant despite the overwhelming odds. "You're insane if you think we'll let you use this thing," he spat. Hye-jin chuckled darkly. "Let me? You misunderstand the situation. You don't have a choice." With a snap of her fingers, the agents raised their weapons, training them on Ji-un and Kyung-min. Hyun-soo remained motionless, caught between loyalty and manipulation. Ji-un felt a surge of anger and despair, torn between protecting her friend and stopping the impending disaster. "You won't get away with this," Ji-un said fiercely, stepping forward despite Kyung-min's protests. "If you activate the Nexus fully, you'll destroy everything, including yourself." "On the contrary," Hye-jin replied, her tone almost playful. "I'll become the architect of a new reality, one free of chaos, disorder, and weakness. A perfect world under my control." Ji-un clenched her fists, frustration bubbling inside her. "There's no such thing as perfection," she shot back. "Only domination disguised as order." For a brief moment, something flickered in Hyejin's eyes. Uncertainty, perhaps, or doubt. But it vanished quickly, replaced by steely resolve. Enough talk, she declared. Secure them. We begin activation immediately. The agents advanced, closing the distance rapidly. Ji-yoon and Kyungmin backed away instinctively, their options dwindling with each passing second. Just as they braced themselves for capture, the ground beneath them trembled violently. The vortex roared to life, its energy surging unpredictably. Sparks flew from the surrounding machinery and the air crackled with static electricity. What's happening? Hyejin demanded, her composure slipping for the first time. The Nexus is destabilizing, Kyungmin shouted, seizing the opportunity. It's rejecting your interference. Chaos erupted as the vortex expanded, engulfing the chamber in blinding light. The agents faltered, shielding their eyes from the glare. In the confusion, Kyungmin grabbed Ji-yoon's hand and pulled her toward the far end of the room, where a small access hatch awaited. Quick, he urged, pushing her ahead of him. We can escape through here. Ji-yoon hesitated, glancing back at Hyun-soo. He stood frozen, caught in the vortex's pull. She wanted to save him, to drag him away from the madness, but there was no time. Reluctantly, she followed Kyungmin into the hatch, slamming it shut behind them. The narrow passageway beyond was pitch black, forcing them to rely on touch and memory to navigate. The roar of the vortex grew fainter as they moved farther away, replaced by the sound of their own ragged breathing. Finally, they reached a ladder leading upward, emerging into a deserted storage area. We need to find a way to shut it down, Ji-yoon said firmly, wiping sweat from her brow. If Hyejin completes the activation sequence, it's over. Kyungmin nodded, his expression grim. There's only one option left. We have to destroy the Nexus core completely, even if it means sacrificing the entire facility. Ji-yoon stared at him, weighing the cost. Destroying the Nexus would erase years of research, countless hours of work. But it was the only way to prevent Hyejin from achieving her twisted vision of control. Do it, she said finally, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Whatever it takes. Together, they retraced their steps toward the main lab, avoiding patrols of Syndicate agents along the way. When they arrived, the Nexus core loomed before them, its glow erratic and unstable. Ji-yoon approached it cautiously, accessing the controls with trembling hands. She initiated the self-destruct protocol, setting a timer for 10 minutes. That should give us enough time to get clear, she said, stepping back. Let's go. But as they turned to leave, a familiar voice stopped them cold. Leaving so soon? Hyejin stood in the doorway, her uniform singed but otherwise unharmed. Behind her, Hyun-soo staggered weakly, his body visibly deteriorating under the strain of the Nexus's influence. His once clear eyes were now clouded, his movements sluggish. You're too late, Hyejin sneered, raising a remote device in her hand. The activation sequence is already underway. Nothing can stop it now. Ji-yoon's heart sank. Had they failed? Was this truly the end? No, Kyungmin said suddenly, stepping forward. There's still one chance. He pulled a small device from his pocket, a fail-safe mechanism designed to override external commands. This will disrupt the activation signal, he explained hurriedly. But I'll need to get close to the core to deploy it. You'll never make it, Hyejin countered, her voice dripping with mockery. My agents are everywhere. You'll be dead before you take 2 steps. Kyungmin glanced at Ji-yoon, his gray eyes filled with quiet determination. Then I'll have to take that risk, he said simply. Stay here. Keep the timer running. If I don't return in time, get out. Promise me. Ji-yoon opened her mouth to protest, but the look in his eyes silenced her. Slowly, reluctantly, she nodded. Be careful, she whispered. With that, Kyungmin sprinted toward the core, weaving through the chaos as alarms blared and sparks flew around him. Hyejin shouted orders to her men who gave chase, firing blindly in their desperation. Ji-yeon watched helplessly, her heart pounding as the countdown ticked closer to 0. Minutes passed like hours. The lab shook violently as the Nexus fought against its impending destruction. Then, just as the timer hit 30 seconds, Kyungmin reappeared, bloodied but alive. He collapsed beside Ji-yoon, gasping for air. Did it work? She asked, panic rising in her chest. He managed a weak smile. It's done. Let's go. Hand in hand, they fled the collapsing facility, the roar of the Nexus's demise following them into the night. Behind them, the building imploded in a burst of light, erasing all traces of the catastrophic experiment. As they stumbled into the open desert, exhaustion and relief washing over them, Ji-yoon looked back one last time. Somewhere amidst the wreckage, Hyunsu had been lost forever. Yet even in grief, she found solace in knowing they had stopped Heejin and saved countless lives in the process. The battle was over, but the scars would linger. And somewhere deep inside, Ji-hyun knew the echoes of alternate realities would haunt her dreams for years to come.